In our gospel reading today, Jesus points out a hero, or more correctly, a heroine, when he says this poor widow put in more than all the other contributors to the treasury, for they have all contributed from their surplus, but she from her poverty has contributed all she has. That gospel story and the Feast of All Saints that was celebrated this past Monday got me thinking. The church holds up for us models, saints for us to model ourselves after. But who are the people that Jesus holds up as models for us? And more importantly, why are they models for us? And so I did a little searching in the Bible, and I came up with a few people that Jesus holds up as models for us. The most obvious one is Peter. You know the story. Jesus and the guys are on a road trip going to Caesarea Philippi, and Jesus asks them, "Who do people say that I am?" They respond, some say you're John the Baptist, others say you're Elijah, others say you're Jeremiah or one of the prophets risen from the dead. And then Jesus turns the question on them and says, "And who do you say that I am?" And Peter says, "You're the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God." And after that, Jesus holds up Peter as a hero. He tells Peter, "You are a rock, and on this rock I will build my church." He holds up Peter as a model for us. You know the story of Nathanael. I showed a clip of this a few weeks ago from The Chosen. Nathanael praying under the fig tree, and Jesus is watching him, although he seems to be totally alone. Later, Philip wants to bring Nathanael to Jesus, and Nathanael utters that somewhat famous line when Philip says that Jesus is from Nazareth. He says, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" And Philip smiles at him and says, "Come and see." And when Jesus meets Nathanael, before Nathanael says anything, Jesus holds him up as a hero, and Jesus says, "This one is a true Israelite. There is nothing deceitful about him." So once again, Jesus holds Nathanael up as a model for us to follow. The scribes and the Pharisees in the Gospels usually get a bad rap. But in our Gospel just last weekend, it was a scribe who came up to Jesus and asked the question, "What commandment of the law is the greatest?" Jesus answers, "Love God and love your neighbor." And then the scribe comments on Jesus' answer. And he says, "Loving God and loving your neighbor is more important than any burnt offering." And Jesus says of him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." Can you imagine Jesus giving you that kind of attaboy or that kind of attagirl, saying of you, "You are not far from the kingdom of God. You're right on track." But he did that for the scribe, and in doing so, he holds him up as a model for us. And then Jesus held up women as models of faith as well. Mary of the Martha and Mary fame. Jesus comes to their home. Martha is busy getting dinner ready, pouring the wine, setting the table, and what's Mary doing? Nothing. Not really nothing, but she's sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to him speak. Martha complains, and Jesus says to her, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious about many things. Only one thing matters." And then he holds Mary up as a model for us. He says, "Mary has chosen the better part, and it shall not be taken from her." Remember the Canaanite woman who asked Jesus to heal her daughter. Jesus said that it's not good to take the food of children and throw it to the dogs. And she comes back with, "Well, even the dogs eat the scrap that fall from the table." In other words, with your power, you can do this without breaking a sweat. And Jesus said of her, "Woman, you have great faith." And in doing so, he holds her up as a model for us. What about the woman known to be a sinner who anoints Jesus' feet? And Jesus said of her that her many sins are forgiven because she's shown great love. These stories of heroes and heroines in our gospel, I think, give us a lot to think about. And the first question I ponder is this: if Jesus holds them up as a model for us, what would it take for Jesus to hold me up as a model for someone else? Or what would it take for Jesus to hold you up as a hero or heroine of the faith? In other words, what qualities is Jesus looking for in his disciples? What qualities did these people have that set them apart as an example for us? A couple of that come to mind, several that come to mind. The first are these: honesty and integrity. In other words, these were people who were real, people who had authenticity in their lives. They didn't mess around trying to be something they weren't. They simply tried to follow God as best they could. They were authentic. They were real. And it seems that Jesus holds that up for a model for us to follow as well. The second thing I find in them is that each of them had a tremendous amount of courage. Peter's the only one who answers the question, "And who do you say that I am?" The Canaanite woman stops Jesus where he's walking, throws herself in front of him, and begs him to heal her daughter. That takes some guts. The scribe has an amount of fortitude to comment on Jesus' answer when he says, "Well said, teacher, you are right." So they had that courage. So authenticity, courage, and finally the third thing that all of them seem to have is faith. Finally, they had faith. They believed in Jesus. They believed he was the Messiah, the Son of God. They believed that he could perform mighty deeds. Their lives were changed by him. They were transformed because of this encounter they had with Jesus and because of their authenticity, their courage, and their faith. These seem to be the qualities that Jesus admired in his disciples. Which leads us to the obvious question: do we have those qualities? Do we have those attributes? Are we those kind of people? How much are we people of integrity? Are we striving to live authentically, to be the person God calls us to be? Do we have the courage to share our faith, and even the courage to grow in our faith? You see, I think there are so many people who want to grow in their faith, and yet they stand back. They hold off. They don't jump into the game because they're afraid it might somehow mess up their life. They have the courage, or they lack the courage, to walk the talk. Finally, are we people of faith? Do we believe that Jesus has something to offer us? Do we believe that Jesus can help us to have better lives? My friends, in the Gospels, Jesus holds up some pretty strong characters for us to be our models. The last question we need to ask ourselves is this: if Jesus came back today,